Raise your hand if you've ever opened your email Sunday night so you can just get ahead of the week in advance and then go to bed spinning about some dumb thing your coworker said that now you're going to have to deal with on Monday. Or maybe you resist the temptation to open your email, but you're still mentally obsessing over what's potentially coming your way when you get online in the morning. The Sunday scaries are draining, that is no surprise, but when they're accepted as a normal part of being an employee, that's when we need to intervene before they cause real damage. So let's talk about what the Sunday scaries actually are, what they're doing to you, and how to fix it. I'm your host, Emily Shutt, a professional certified coach with over a decade of experience helping smart, driven women untangle their drama around money, relationships, and well being. I'm here to help you do the same using science backed coaching tools rooted in cognitive behavioral theory, positive psychology, and peak performance. You'll leave with actionable steps for approaching your own life with clarity and confidence. Let's get into it. I definitely did not hear the term Sunday scaries until I started working full time after college, but I think the vibe is pervasive in many life stages because our brains are still our brains and they love to crash out about a hypothetical future that hasn't happened yet, which is basically what's happening with the Sunday scaries. There are a couple of things that can trigger them from what I've seen in my own life and in my work with clients. First, there's the future tripping where your brain is predicting the usually bad outcome of some specific, defined, looming event that you think is on the horizon. That might be an argument or a conflict of some kind at work that has yet to be resolved, or just a challenging discussion with a difficult customer or boss. Or maybe it's a really complicated problem you've been tasked to resolve and you don't know how you're going to figure it out yet. Maybe it's just that you know that you're going to have to respond to that passive aggressive email from that guy in that other department. Maybe it's just that you have a lot of work to do and it always seems to be piling up no matter how long your hours are. Then there's the other Sunday scaries that I would say are more existential, like life is slipping away, your weekend wasn't what you hoped it would be, you don't feel rested, this is never going to end, this is what your life is. I'm kind of saying that dramatically because our brains are indeed very dramatic about it. I wanted to call out these two types because they do have different root causes. So we'll take a look at both, but the outcomes are linked. And I want you to think about how they might show up in your own life and maybe are impacting you in a bigger way than you might have realized before. But rest assured, this can be addressed. So for the first one, there's a couple of things going on. First, it's about noticing your brain's tendency to try to predict the future, which it is not always really great at. And it's usually going to default to the most negative spin that it can put on things just to keep you safe and prepare you for the worst. There's also the social programming that we're supposed to already have everything done, and any outstanding tasks need to be addressed right away, no matter how insignificant. So it makes sense that we would think that this is just natural and responsible to check our emails on Sunday and get organized for the week ahead. That's what we call it. But notice if you're getting organized, which is fine, or if you're having an emotional reaction to something you see in your inbox and then ruminating about it all night and into the next day when you actually do address it. You end up giving time and energy to it that you're essentially going to duplicate the next day when you're only resolving the thing, whatever it is, once. So it's an inefficient way to work if you want to think about it that way. For the second type that's more existential, I think that's when it's that, like, what am I doing with my life question, and almost doubling down on the work or the Netflix or the wine or whatever your thing is as a way to distract yourself from the bigger question of literally answering, what are you doing with your life? Do you like it? You don't have to like passionately love it, love your job. It's nice if you do, but I think it's kind of unrealistic to aspire to in a lot of cases. Like, no one is passionate about accounting, I'm sorry, but if you do love what it gives you in other areas of your life, financially or otherwise, like that's where the connection point is. Are you comfortable with that exchange? Sometimes people get really spun up about this idea that they're meant to absolutely love their job passionately or they're wasting their life. And I just think that's a lot of pressure. And a lot of times that's also a signal that someone is spending too much of their life at work and they don't have other stuff going on in their life. And so it's going to feel like a waste because they're not even doing something that they like. But it's worth asking yourself when you're trying to numb out from the Sunday scaries anxiety, like, what are you trying to insulate yourself from? It always seems scariest until we shine a light on it. So, what are some of the get ahead of the week, quote unquote, habits that we think are supportive, but actually feed anxiety and make things worse? First, unless your job literally requires it for life saving purposes, checking your work email or Slack messages on a Sunday night, I would say is unlikely to be helping you. In some cases, it's possible that it's fine. Like if you are just getting caught up on something that came in, let's say when you were out of town or you were waiting for a specific deal to close and expected it over the weekend, then it makes sense to check in on and make a list or whatever you need to do to get organized for the week ahead. But again, if you are having some sort of emotional reaction that's causing you suffering, that is not helpful. I've had clients do this on Sundays or even on Saturdays and then completely lose their minds over something minor that they saw that ruins their weekend or the rest of their evening. And then by the time Monday comes around, the thing has actually resolved itself anyway. That happens all the time. The only one who loses in that scenario is you or the people that are on blast with any emails you might send in your reactionary phase. So be really careful about it if you're checking your email. That's kind of the doubling down on work approach to distraction, which seems counterintuitive, but people will absolutely use work as a way to distract themselves from how they feel about work or about something else that's going on in their lives. Some other numbing or distraction techniques that I see a lot, and I think a lot of these will be familiar to many of us, are things like doom scrolling on TikTok or Instagram, watching Netflix for hours, maybe drinking more wine than you meant to, staying up way too late to try to get some alone time. We call this revenge bedtime procrastination, among other things. So I mentioned earlier that these types of scaries are connected, and that's because if you think about the situational scaries, we'll call them, you are not present in the moment because you're trying to solve for something that either hasn't happened yet or can't realistically be addressed yet because you need input from other people who are doing other things on Sunday night and not stressing about work. I mean, they probably are stressing about work as well, but they are not likely to hop on a call with you to deal with whatever's the perceived emergency. They are stressing privately in their own homes. Your life is happening in real time on that Sunday night, whether that's having dinner with your partner, watching a show you're both invested in, playing with your dog who misses you while you're at work all week, going for a walk with your mom to see the changing leaves in fall. Whenever you indulge in the situational scaries, you're ripped away from the real moments that are happening right now that you will not get back. And that is the bridge to the existential scaries. Like, what are you doing? The longer we leave situational rumination unchecked, the more our lack of presence compounds and the more lost we feel. We don't feel connected to anything that matters to us, and that completely freaks us out, and understandably so. But we are in charge of the connection or lack thereof. We get to decide whether to be present or not, even when the present is uncomfortable. So check in with yourself about whether your own Sunday scaries have crossed the line from just mild nerves to something that's draining your joy. If you're nervous about a presentation you have coming up that week, that's one thing, and it's normal to kind of notice if you want to rehearse it a bit more, or if you know that your nerves are just a sign that you care about your material. But are you letting it spiral into thoughts about how you're not good at public speaking, you're in over your head, you don't think people will take you seriously or care what you're sharing, and then you'll never get promoted and you'll actually get fired for messing this up now that you think about it, and on until you're like binge eating tear soaked cake over the kitchen sink at 11 p.m. Not that I've ever personally done that, of course. I'm just kidding. I've done that. We've all done that or some version of that, right? We normalize this pattern as part of adult life instead of seeing it as a warning sign that there's something else going on within us that wants to be addressed. Basically, there is a part of us that's upset about something, and we want to do the work to find out what that is so that we can resolve it. A lot of times, the good news is it's actually something that once we identify it and say it out loud, we're kind of like, oh, yeah, I know I used to have that thought pattern that I'm whatever, not good enough, not smart enough, not respected, or so on. But that is an old story. I don't think that anymore. It's kind of like a little kid who needs to be reminded that everything is okay when they're like spinning out about forgetting their lunchbox. Like our brains all have a toddler persona that sometimes throws a tantrum. So in that case, it's not necessarily that something has actually gone wrong. It's just that we need to check in and remind ourselves that, basically explain to ourselves that everything is in fact okay. When we check in with ourselves about what's really upsetting us and we find that there is something that's a true problem and we want to address it, that discovery is also a win. Both scenarios can be more easily resolved by really cultivating a sense of presence in each moment. You cannot fully register and address what you are not present to. Being present isn't always peaceful. Sometimes there is really hard stuff going on, and presence can feel scary, like it will be too much to bear. But if we can work to build up the capacity to tolerate it and the skills to address whatever is there, we're going to be so much more effective. Because the thing isn't going away if we just try to distract ourselves forever. The thing usually feels bigger, and we have to try to get farther and farther away to maintain the illusion of ignoring it. And then we end up with habits that we know on some level are really hurting us, but we don't know how to get out from under it. A lot of these habits will disguise themselves as relaxing, and sometimes they can be temporarily, but they're really avoidance or anxiety in disguise in many cases. And that's because we're not addressing the actual thought patterns that are going on while we're doing the thing. So if you're like, oh, I'm totally fried, I want to zone out and watch Netflix, you turn on Netflix, but then you're also scrolling your phone, or again, you're checking your email, you're not relaxing. It's like trying to trick yourself into saying you're relaxing, but your body is not buying it and continues to be on high alert. And also, that split attention, again, is extremely exhausting. Your brain is splitting attention, which is its own thing entirely. You want to think about how to cultivate feelings of relaxation in any activity that's meant to relax you, and that starts with your thoughts. You can be anxious at the spa. I have done it myself. So the scene might sound familiar to you. You're finally winding down on Sunday night, you make dinner, and you see you have a message from your boss. You're like, it's fine. I'll check it really quick in case there's an emergency. I would also ask yourself, what is an emergency? Like, how do you define that? And then, assuming it's not an emergency, I'll just handle it tomorrow. But your boss's message is about your direct report who completely messed something up and you made your boss look bad. And they want you to talk to your direct report about it on Monday so that it doesn't happen again. So now your heart rate is increasing, you feel flushed and maybe angry. First at your direct report for making a careless error, but then really at yourself for not catching it before it went to your boss. But now your partner is waiting for you to join them for dinner. So you want to focus on that because maybe it's your anniversary, but you're also trying to check through the slides on your phone to see where things went wrong and then rehashing the emails to see where you should have intervened earlier or where you can maybe pinpoint that your direct report ignored your guidance that you had already sent over at like XYZ date and time. And now you're like a trial lawyer trying to prove a case. Meanwhile, your husband is trying to tell you something important to him, but you can't focus. And then you get frustrated with him that he's disappointed that you're on your phone during your time together. But you're really just mad at yourself again because you said you were going to be more present and you actually hate your job. And that why would your boss send that to you on a Sunday night anyway? What are you even doing here? Like, see how it escalates? We're looking for circumstances to blame and firing wildly while blindfolded. Everybody loses. You don't get that night back, that dinner back, that conversation back, and the spiral doesn't resolve the issue at work. That still has to be dealt with the next day. So we want to practice actually leaving it for the next day. Avoidance, on the other hand, can feel really appealing when we feel powerless about the week ahead. But sometimes, even if we don't feel powerless and we do know how to deal with whatever we're dreading, we're still dreading it. We want to avoid feeling bad. That's a normal human tendency. But things that feel bad are part of the full spectrum of human experience. And generally speaking, they're just temporary physical sensations that pass actually pretty quickly unless we resist them so hard that we create a whole new beast to contend with. Like our suffering comes from our resistance to the feeling. Sometimes clients will come to me having already created a really elaborate ritual for Sunday Scaries as a way to suppress the urge to, like, let's say, check their work email as an example, whatever behavior they think is the issue, they want to distract from it. But they're coming to me because they still feel anxious all the time and their methods of control aren't working. That's because they're trying to control the behavior without addressing the underlying thought pattern. So that is where we must start. The only way out is through. I actually love rituals, and I'm a huge believer in the grounding power of very simple routines. Our brains love predictability, we love routines, and we can teach ourselves to pair behaviors with thoughts that we want to cultivate. But if we do the behavior without the thought work, it's not really effective. It's not going to stick. We want to be really intentional about how we build routines and rituals to support our well being instead of panic prepping and doom spiraling on Sunday nights and then wondering why we still feel bad. So, first things first, your brain isn't predicting disaster, or at least not accurately predicting disaster. It's just doing what brains do in their default setting and getting caught in a negative thought loop. What's actually happening to your brain on Sunday nights that keeps you from relaxing? Like, what is the real mechanism here? Essentially, your brain is trying to protect you from danger, but it's kind of like it's running outdated software if you want to think about it that way. You've probably heard of the amygdala. If you're here and have experienced stress before, it's that little almond shaped alarm system in your brain that's constantly scanning for threats. The problem is, it does not distinguish between a saber-toothed tiger and a Slack notification. It just senses potential stress and sounds the alarm. Then your prefrontal cortex, which is supposed to talk you down with logic, tries to help by being like, you're right, this week is going to be awful. Let's map out every possible failure scenario before bed and plan to potentially address whatever might come. That's when you get stuck in analysis loops instead of actually relaxing. So thoughts are not facts, but thoughts will feel like facts when your body is in a stress response. Once cortisol and adrenaline kick in, your physical sensations like the tight chest, racing mind, shallow breathing will convince your brain that something is definitely wrong. Your brain basically goes, well, we wouldn't feel anxious if there wasn't a threat. And then, boom, suddenly the story hardens into so called proof of a threat. So it's classic confirmation bias. Your brain looks for reasons to justify discomfort you're already feeling. That's why awareness of sensations is such a powerful entry point. Calm the body, and the brain's evidence collapses so you can start to see things a little more objectively. So now you're probably like, okay, how am I supposed to trust anything? And am I supposed to do nothing? Like, how can you tell the difference between useful planning and unproductive rumination? A good rule of thumb is that useful planning has an endpoint. You make a list, you decide when you're going to handle something, and then you stop. Rumination, on the other hand, has no finish line. It feels like you're solving something, but you're actually just marinating in anxiety. If you notice you're rehashing the same thought 3 times in a row with no new information, you're no longer planning, you're looping. So try asking yourself, is this helping me take action? Or is this just helping me feel like I have some false sense of control? If it's the latter, it's time to step away. Don't get stuck in thinking that rumination is the same as meaningful action. If you feel like you're ruminating and having a hard time pulling out of it, here's one thing you can try. Practice naming 3 facts and 3 thoughts. They are not the same thing. It might look something like this. Fact number 1, it's 9:42 p.m. on Sunday. Fact, I have a meeting at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Fact, my presentation slides are done. Then, thought, my boss is going to hate my ideas. Thought, I should have started prepping earlier. I always procrastinate. I hate that about myself. Thought, I'm going to have to redo this entire thing and it's going to wreck my week. So when you separate facts from thoughts, it brings you back to the present and teaches your brain to parse out what is just a circumstance and what is an optional thought you can change. You'll notice that almost everything fueling your panic or anxiety lives in the thought column, and that means it's optional. You can choose a new one once you label it. So the new thoughts might be, my boss might have some changes, and that's okay. Or my prep was a little rushed, but I was able to get it done, thankfully. I'll remember to start earlier next time if I can. And if I have to make edits, maybe so and so can help. They've been asking to take on more responsibility recently. Now, especially for my perfectionists and people pleasers, of which I have been known to self identify, we'll rarely allow ourselves a true off switch. Like, we don't just rest, we perform rest to the max. We schedule self care the same way we would schedule a deliverable and then judge ourselves for not feeling zen enough afterwards. The Sunday scaries hit especially hard when your self worth is tied to others' opinions because Monday becomes a stage where you might disappoint someone. So your brain tries to preempt that disappointment by rehearsing every possible thing that could go wrong, which, spoiler, just ensures that you're exhausted before the week even begins. And then you are making it more likely that you actually really won't perform at your best. So you're manifesting your own worst fears. I get a lot of, I just need to be more organized. And people who are objectively very organized will say this to me. To that, I'd say, like, maybe, okay, like it's not my job to dispute, your vision of what's going on for you, but offering alternate perspectives, like maybe you need to be more kind to yourself while you're disorganized. So organization is great, but it's not a cure for anxiety. It's really just a container for it. Like you can color code every task in your planner, but if your thoughts about those tasks are harsh, you will still feel behind no matter how organized you are. So before reorganizing your entire life, try reorganizing your self-talk. Like instead of I'm behind, it's I'm human, or I didn't finish everything because I did what was reasonable for today. I did what I needed to do. You can't self-criticize yourself into self-compassioning yourself. Know what I mean? Made up a new word there, but I think you get it. And I joke all the time with clients that when I first started studying self compassion, I definitely felt like it was basically like a trap that lazy people wanted me to fall into so that I would be lazy and they wouldn't have to feel so bad about themselves because they couldn't get it together, which is amazing now that I look back at it. Like, obviously, there's a lot to unpack there. But I was still intrigued by the research about enhanced performance being linked to self compassion. So that was like my entry point. And I decided to start experimenting with it over time and teaching myself to be kind to myself, even when I wasn't perfect. And I can officially say that it works. Not only am I actually more productive, and I was already very productive, but I will say the bar is pretty high, but my life is also a lot more chill now because I'm not constantly berating myself anymore. And a lot of my clients have the same results. So, how do we truly reset on a Sunday night to get some relief from the scaries? A true reset restores your energy, whereas a disguised fix will just rearrange your anxiety. So, first, if needed, just calmly and objectively do whatever is truly going to set you up for success on Monday from an administrative perspective. If that is organizing your inbox for like 15, 20 minutes, so be it. But cap it and move on to actually calming and relaxing yourself before bed. A small way to reset and soothe your nervous system in a non performative way is going to be anything that engages your senses instead of your screen. So, stretching for 2 minutes, literally 2 minutes. Or if you must, you can watch TV while you stretch, not a big deal. But resist the urge to then like take a snapshot of your stretching on your phone and like post it to Instagram with a caption about how you're doing self care now, and then refreshing to see how many likes it gets. Like at that point, we have lost the plot. So other ideas might be things like sitting outside with your dog and just like noticing the temperature of the air, or look at the leaves, look at the stars, write for a few minutes in a journal, read a book, like a paper book, like in the olden days. True soothing happens when the body realizes that you're safe, not when your mind convinces you that you're almost prepared enough to be safe later. Think about how you can plan your week from a place of compassion versus criticism. When you plan with critical energy, it's going to sound like I have to get my act together. And the undercurrent there is like, I'm a piece of shit, or my boss is an asshole for making me do all this stuff. Like, there's a harsh vibe. When you plan with compassion, on the other hand, it sounds like, what would make this week feel lighter? So, same calendar, completely different nervous system response. And the action itself might be the same or very similar. Like, either way, you're probably looking at your meetings for the week and figuring out what you need to attend to versus not. You're screening your emails for what needs timely responses versus not, right? But the energy behind it when you're saying, what would make this week feel lighter, is teaching your brain that that's what you deserve and are expecting for yourself. You deserve to have an experience of lightness, even when there is a lot of work to be done. So remind yourself Monday is not a moral test. It's just another day of being alive. You're not being graded on how perfectly you re enter productivity, nor is there a moral standard for how you are supposed to use your weekend. Monday will take what Monday requires. You don't have to give it your Sunday too. If I were to suggest doing only one thing differently this Sunday, it would be this: stop rehearsing pain that hasn't happened yet. Your body doesn't know the difference. There's a great quote attributed to Mark Twain that goes, I've had a lot of worries in my life, most of which never happens, right? Most of the imagined scenarios our brains come up with do not actually come to fruition. And with self compassion, we can teach ourselves that we will be capable of handling whatever comes, even for those few scary scenarios that do actually materialize. So, whatever is coming, you can trust yourself that you'll be capable of navigating it when the time comes. That's what you need to practice believing. I hope you came away with some insights you can apply in your own life right away. I will see you next time.